It's all set to go.
Great, thank you, Penny, for starting recording. So everyone, welcome to the overview of the new Special Olympics Pennsylvania Strategic Plan. I'm Matt Aaron, the CEO of Special Olympics Pennsylvania. Thanks to everybody for taking the time to view this webinar or be part of this webinar for those who are logged in live. I'd like to spend the next few minutes going through the plan. And in front of you, those of you who are dialed in for the scheduled webinar, hopefully you have a copy of our infographic, which is a 2-page front and back handout. The front page looks like this. Back page looks like this. Anyone who is downloading this from the website to view later, you should be able to find an electronic copy of this same infographic out on our website. This 2-page document is a snapshot overview of the entire plan, and it's something that I'll be referring to throughout the webinar as we go through the discussion this evening. So here are the questions that I'm hoping I can answer for everyone as part of this overview this evening. First, why do we even have a strategic plan? Well, the main reason for having a strategic plan is it guides our activities. And I'll talk in a couple minutes a little bit more about that. But if you don't have a plan, then it's easy to get distracted with the next shiny, new, good idea that comes along. There are a lot of good ideas out there. In fact, there are a lot more good ideas out there than we could possibly execute. So a strategic plan helps us stay focused. And again, I'll come back and talk about that a little bit more in a couple minutes. Second question, what does the plan mean to me as a local program volunteer? So the focus of this webinar, the series of town hall meetings that we've done, is really trying to help make the state level, statewide 5-year strategic plan something that's real and meaningful for all of you, where you sit, where you spend your time, where you interact as part of your Special Olympics lives. And so I will try to do that in the discussion this evening. And then finally, and this is where we'll come back to that infographic I just mentioned a minute ago, what's actually in the plan, and if we accomplish everything we're trying to, what does that mean? So at the end of 2020, what will we have accomplished? And so at the end of this brief overview tonight, I hope I've done a good job of answering all those questions for you. So first, why do we have a plan? What is it? It's a guiding document that helps provide focus for all of us for the entire organization for the next 5 years. It identifies 3 goals for us for the next 5 years. And in fact, we aligned our plan with the global strategic plan for Special Olympics International. When we started our planning process a couple of years ago, we weren't quite sure where the global movement was going or even when they would complete their next strategic plan. But last summer, which would be July of 2015, as we saw their plan starting to come together, we saw their timeline, and we also saw where the input we were getting from all of our stakeholders, including many of you, where that was pointing us, we realized that what we were looking at was very similar to what the global movement was focusing on, and therefore we made a specific decision that we were going to align our plan with the global plan. So if you look at our strategic plan, and we're not going through the whole document tonight, just the infographic, but the actual written plan that goes along with that infographic is a 17-page written plan. The global plan is similar. It's about 19 pages long, but if you go through it, you will see things that look very familiar. In fact, at the goal and strategy level, which we'll talk about in a few minutes, you will see things that look exactly the same. We did that intentionally. We pulled our language and aligned our goals exactly with theirs so that we are aligned together. And I think that's important as a global organization, that we're all trying to go in a common direction. Where there are differences, and I will highlight some of them as we go through the talk tonight, the differences are when you get down to the detailed level of execution, what are the specific things we're trying to accomplish in Pennsylvania, and what are some of the areas of emphasis. So, for example, there are some areas in our plan that we have chosen to emphasize more strongly than they're being emphasized at the global level. And there are a few things that at the global level they're focused on that either don't apply or that we've chosen specifically not to emphasize as much here in Pennsylvania. So that's really where you start to see the differences. But at the high level, we made it a point to be in direct alignment with the global strategy. So I talked about what the plan helps us do by focusing our direction. I think it's also important to point out that another thing that's just as important that a strategic plan helps you do is it helps you make decisions about what not to do. So I mentioned in the introduction that there are always many, many good ideas out there. As we make decisions, given our limited resources, whether they're dollars, people's time, and so forth, it's important when you can't do everything to be able to have a framework to say what is most important, what are we going to say yes to, and what do we have to say no to. And having this strategic plan is an important tool to help us do that. So let me move on to the second question, and one that hopefully is a meaningful one to all of you. What does this strategic plan mean to you in Erie or in Delaware County or wherever you sit? Why do you care? So I explained kind of why we want a plan, but beyond that, what does having this state-level 5-year plan really mean? Well, first of all, for anyone, it's difficult sometimes to just get your mind around something that's as big and broad as a statewide plan that covers 5 years. Most people don't think, obviously, in terms of 5 years. So at the state level and working with the staff and working with our board of directors, we have some tools that we're using to break this plan up into annual pieces during implementation so that we can manage to it. I'm not planning to talk about those specifics tonight, but they do exist. Rather, what I want to do tonight is talk about what this means from the local program side. So on the slide that you should see right now, it talks about partnership agreements. Those of you on the phone who are program managers should have already received a draft copy of this from your field director. My hope is that this partnership agreement becomes just what the title says, that it becomes a working agreement between you at the local program level and us at the state office level via your field director, and an agreement where it's something that collectively you and your field director discuss and talk through what makes sense, and in some cases perhaps what doesn't make sense, to come up with an agreement that will be unique to each of your programs. So on the slide you see that on the left it starts with Adams County and shows sort of carbon copies of a plan all the way across to York County. So each of our 56 local programs will have its own unique partnership agreement because each of you are at a different place with different needs and different opportunities, different challenges, and so forth. So each of the agreements will be customized to your specific case. We realize that you're all busy, and so I've asked our field team and specifically the field directors to put the first draft together, but that doesn't mean that this is something that we are writing in stone and then trying to cram down your throats. As I said, it is intended to be an agreement and something that I hope you'll work on collaboratively. So by asking the field directors to put the draft together, that's a place for you to start the dialogue. And again, you may find that there's things that they've drafted that make sense, and you say, yeah, this is good. And there may be some things where you say, no, this is wrong, or this doesn't make sense, or we're not ready for that, or whatever the case may be. And that's where I want you all to have a dialogue and figure out what does make sense. The other thing that you may determine, or you may say is, well, we've got some initiatives in our local program that don't really fit within the strategic plan. What about all that stuff? Are we supposed to just stop doing that, or is that something we're supposed to track somewhere else? The answer is no. There is a place in the partnership agreement for you to capture and reflect, or your field director to capture any of those specific activities. So for example, perhaps it doesn't fit in directly with a goal of the strategic plan, but maybe your local program has been working on a plan to build some bocce courts and something that you're planning to finish over the next couple of years. That would obviously be a major initiative and one that you would want to be able to track and manage. So there's a place in the partnership agreement to include that, with the intent and the goal being that this partnership agreement becomes a useful tool, not just a paperwork exercise, but a useful tool that can be used both by the field director as they try to track multiple programs and where they are and how they're doing, as well as a useful tool that you can use at the local program level, because it should capture all the key things that you're working on, both related to the strategic plan as well as other key initiatives that you may be working. So again, it should be simple, it should be something that you can use to manage, and it should be something that you, the local programs, and the field directors all talk about and agree upon and work collectively. So in addition to the things I've just mentioned in terms of goals and activities, there are places in the agreement to indicate what the local program specifically is doing with respect to certain goals and what support or activities are taking place from the state office level. So you may need some specific support from your field director to support an initiative. You may need to reach back into other parts of the state team, for example, to support a fundraising initiative. You may be needing or seeking help from our development team. Whatever it is, there's a place in there to reflect both the activity at the local level as well as support from the state office. Again, reflecting that idea of this being a partnership in working together collectively so that we achieve the goals of the strategic plan. So if we were to take all of these 56 partnership agreements that I've been talking about, one for each of the programs, and we were to roll them all together and then add in the other things that are happening at the state level that perhaps, there are other things going on that don't tie directly to the partnership agreement, but statewide activities related to the plan. If we were to roll all of that together, add it up, then ideally it should get us to the place we want to be at the end of the plan, because it should reflect all collectively all of those activities that we need to be doing to accomplish our goals. So that's the intent of creating these, is to make the plan real for you at the local program level. What's my piece of this strategy, and what does it look like year by year? And then collectively to be able to roll that all up together to say, if we're all working together across the entire state office, local programs, and we add all this together, are we getting where we want to be? So that's the intent of the partnership agreements. I think I touched on this, but it's an important question, so let me make sure by going back and stating this one more time in case I didn't emphasize it clearly enough. One question that's come up in some of the town halls, and one question you might be asking as well is, well, there's a lot of stuff here. We're already busy doing a lot of things at our local program level, and in some cases we've already expressed desires, frustrations, challenges with resource demands. Either we don't have enough volunteers, we don't have enough coaches, we don't have enough money, whatever, the needs vary by local program. But we've heard questions come up, there's a lot of new stuff here. How are you expecting us to do all of this, and isn't this just adding more on top of what we're already trying to do? Well, two things. First of all, this plan is about ensuring that we go back to doing the basics, that we're doing the basics well. So we have to deliver our core mission. And in saying that, there are lots of things that we're trying to accomplish in this strategic plan, but we also realize that for some local programs, and I mentioned that every program is unique and at a different place, for some programs that may mean that you're not ready in year one or maybe even year two to start executing things that tie to the goals in the strategic plan. There may be some very basic other things that you have to do before you're ready to try to implement some of those other things. That's fine, that's understandable, that's part of this as well. So your partnership agreement should reflect those things, and again, they may not reflect accomplishing the specific goals in the plan in year one or two, but they should reflect the collaboration between your program and the state office in terms of putting those things in place that would enable you to do that in years 2, 3, 4, or 5. So I hope that gave a good overview of the partnership agreement. Once we finish the overview, we can come back in the question and answer session if there are additional questions there. But for purposes of the recorded webinar, I'd like to move on to the third piece of this, which is talking about and answering the questions about what's in the actual plan and what is it that we're trying to accomplish. So the partnership agreement will hopefully help spell that out specifically at your local program level, but I'm going to spend the rest of the webinar now going through the infographic and talking at the higher level about what the statewide plan looks like and what it is we're trying to accomplish collectively over the next 5 years between now and the end of 2020. So on the screen in front of you, you have a copy of the infographic, and on the front page you have this diagram that looks sort of like a soccer field, or that's what's in the background, with these colored areas on the front of it. And I'm going to try to, if I can find the right tools, use some of the online tools here to highlight some things as we go along, and hopefully they'll show up on your screens. So I want to start at the top by highlighting the vision statement. You see me circling it here, and unfortunately it's showing up in red on red now, where it was showing up earlier today when I tested it in gray. Hopefully you can all see that, but even if you can't see the circle, up at the top of the infographic in quotes is a vision statement. And it reads, "Our vision is to use sports to open hearts and minds toward people with intellectual disabilities and create inclusive communities all over the world." That vision statement is drawn, again, directly out of the global plan, because we're trying to align collectively. And that vision statement was developed by SOI as a way to basically paraphrase the ultimate goal statement of Special Olympics. And I'm going to read that goal for everyone now, at least a piece of it, because I think it's a really important statement that most people are unfamiliar with. The goal of Special Olympics, and it's something that is captured in a document called the General Rules, which SOI puts out, which is a guiding document for the entire movement. And the goal is stated in there right next to our mission statement. So everyone is familiar with the mission of Special Olympics, and I think this is unfortunate. Unfortunately, many people are not as familiar with the goal statement, but they're side by side in this document. And the goal statement reads in part, "The ultimate goal of Special Olympics is to help persons with intellectual disabilities participate as productive and respected members of society at large." So that is the guiding, overarching, and what they call here ultimate goal of Special Olympics. So if that's what we're really trying to accomplish, and it's paraphrased in this vision statement at the top of the infographic here that's also in the strategic plan, if that's what we're really trying to accomplish, then everything else in the strategy should link to that, point to that, and help us accomplish that. So please keep that in mind as we talk through the goals and the strategies, that all of those things are intended to help us realize or achieve that vision or the ultimate goal of Special Olympics. So now I'm going to spend the next few minutes talking about each of the three goals. And I'm going to use this little red highlighter spotlight thing on the screen as we go around, because I think that's a little bit easier to see than the mouse pointer. I'm going to assume that everybody can see that now. I'm moving it around up here next to the improve athlete performance goal. If you can't see it or you're having problems following, if you would take your phone off mute and let me know, I will stop. But otherwise, I'm just going to keep going here and assume that everyone can see it. So the first goal is improve athlete performance. And the way the goals and the strategies link and the way this infographic is laid out is the goal is shown at the top in a darker color, and underneath it in a lighter shade of that same color are strategies that relate to the goal. So for the first goal of improve athlete performance, you see there are three strategies: improve sports quality, expand unified sports in young athletes, and improve athlete health. Each of those three strategies are related to improving athlete performance, and tied to each of those strategies, these three strategies in this case, are some associated tactics, and we've defined targets related to all of these, which are the things that we're trying to accomplish over the next 5 years. So I'm going to pause for a second with this slide and advance to the next one, which is the flip side of the infographic. On the back of the infographic, you see areas that are color-coded using the same colors as the front. And if you look at the colors and the text, they all line up. So the goal that we just talked about on the front in blue is highlighted here in back in blue. Each strategy, improve sports quality, expand unified sports and young athletes, and improve athlete health, has its own area. And underneath each one, there are a series of metrics or targets. These are the specific things that we're trying to accomplish. If it doesn't have a year next to it, it means we're trying to accomplish that goal. Again, this is at the state level, so across the entire state, we're trying to accomplish that by the end of 2020. And if there's a plan to accomplish that sooner, then that's indicated, as you see here with this third one, about accomplishing this particular one by 2017. So that's how the two sides of this link together, with all of the specific metrics and targets being here on the back page, the back side of the two-page infographic. So let me go back to the front side, and I'll pick up with a little bit more information to finish talking about the first goal. So this first goal really links to what I was saying earlier. It's about quality. So it's an internal goal, an internally focused goal within Special Olympics, or in our case within Special Olympics Pennsylvania, focused on quality. And so as you look at the strategy, sports quality, that has to do with coaching, it has to do with the athlete experience, expanding unified sports and young athletes. This is an area where I mentioned that we are emphasizing some things in Pennsylvania more than at the global level. Here in Pennsylvania, we're emphasizing unified. In particular, we are focused and have a dedicated plan just for the interscholastic unified program that we're growing around the state. We're currently in about 8 different counties and about 60 different schools. We have plans to grow that by about 30 schools per year. And starting next year, we plan to be in all geographic regions of the state. Not every county, but basically the 6 geographic regions of the state, with an additional 30 schools next year. Because we are focusing there, we've also chosen not to emphasize as much young athletes. Not because I don't think, or we don't think that that's an important, helpful, good program. It is. I think it's a great program, but from a resource and a bandwidth and capacity standpoint, we just can't do everything. And so we made a strategic decision to emphasize unified and not to put as much emphasis against young athletes. And so I won't continue to flip back and forth on the slides, but if you want to turn over your infographic, you can see what I'm talking about when you look at the metrics under that strategy related to unified and young athletes. You'll see the 4th bullet down talks about at least 15 programs offer young athletes by the end of 2020. So our plan here is to support local programs that are interested in doing it, and we have some toolkits and resources to make available that can do that, but we're not looking at trying to have every program doing it by the end of this plan, but rather just 15. So that's an example of where we're focusing. In terms of unified, there are really 2 areas within this entire strategic plan that I think are really important levers that we can pull, so to speak, where we can have a big impact. So if we focus in a couple of particular areas, we can have a really big impact in terms of accomplishing that overarching goal, that vision statement that I mentioned at the beginning that's at the top. So the first of those areas is unified. And the reason that I say that is unified sports brings together, by its very design, brings together on the same team people with and without intellectual disabilities. And when you do that right, and I know there are a lot of questions out there about unified and concerns about unified, but when you do it correctly and you bring together people who are of comparable ages and ability levels, and they're well matched on well-divisioned, good unified teams, something magical happens. When you have people with and without intellectual disabilities on the same team together. When someone who's a partner views an athlete with an intellectual disability as their teammate, a mind shift happens. And so that's very powerful and in a really important way that we're seeing success not only here in Pennsylvania, but globally. Special Olympics is seeing huge success with Unified. And so that's the first area that I think is a really powerful tool to help us achieve that overall vision and goal. The second area is one that we'll come to later as we step through the overview here, and that's athlete leadership. So wrapping up this first goal, the third strategy is about improving athlete health. I hope most of you are familiar with our Healthy Athletes program. As you know, that provides screenings to our athletes. It's a great program, but there are also some shortcomings of that. We only are able to offer it currently at state competitions, and so that only reaches a small percentage of our athletes. It's by its design a screening, and so we don't offer care, and in many cases we know that even when we identify a problem through a screening, our athletes don't always go back home and get that follow-up care. So there's some things that we're pursuing over the next few years to help address some of those concerns, really broadening the program from a healthy athletes mindset to a healthy communities mindset. And we're also going to be trying to focus more on health, fitness, and nutrition, and shifting, for example, from an 8 weeks training mindset to more of a year-round lifetime model of health and fitness for our athletes. So multiple initiatives there that are interrelated, but they all tie to improving athlete health and this broader goal, which really originated here in Pennsylvania, largely from our athletes who came forward and said back in 2014, prior to the last Athlete Congress, that health, fitness, and nutrition was their #1 priority. So we've taken that to heart, and it's an important part of this strategy under this goal here. So that's goal #1. As I said, it's related to quality. And again, I want to go back to emphasize something that I mentioned previously that I don't think I did a good job of in some of the other town halls, so I want to make sure that I emphasize it tonight. Despite the fact that I'm talking about a lot of new things here and growth and activities that we want to add, a really important part of this whole goal under improving athlete performance is quality and the athlete experience. And so if we're not doing the basics well, then we need to stop and make sure that we do that, that we've got good coaching, that we've got good programs, that we've got good training. And so I know that there are some ongoing issues and concerns about some of those things, and those are things that we are planning to address. So I wanted to make it a point here under this goal to point out that back to the basics is an important part of this plan as well. So that's the first goal. Let me move over to the other side now and talk about the second goal. The second goal, build positive attitudes, is really an external goal, where the first one was internal. And this one is focused on changing attitudes, helping broader society, our communities, understand and appreciate our athletes. So again, this is all part of and linked to this vision of helping our athletes become productive and respected members of society. In order to do that, we've got to help change mindsets and perceptions. Many of the things that you see under this goal, the strategies here, improving external awareness, connecting the movement, maximizing impact of games and competitions, they're really things that they're not new. And that was one of the important things that I think SOI realized as part of their planning process. They made a very specific decision and consciously focused on not creating a lot of new things with this plan. So yes, there are new things we want to accomplish. There are things that we want to grow, but you will see over here, for example, with expanding Unified and young athletes, these are intended to do more with programs we already have. We're not creating new programs. and that was by design. Similarly here under the second goal, with things like maximizing the impact of games and competitions, we don't need to create a bunch of new opportunities to try to engage the community. We've got, here in Pennsylvania, almost 300 competitions a year. We've got tons of fundraisers. We've got lots of activities. What we need to do collectively, and so this is, I think, at the state office level as well as the local program level, what we all need to do a better job of is getting people out to those events. We've said for a long time, I've heard our volunteers say it, I've said it, I've heard other people say it, that when people come out and see our athletes, there's magic that happens, and when people come out to an event, they get hooked. Well, if that's true, and I believe it is, we need to do a better job of getting people out so that we can get more people hooked. And so that's really all bundled together what this goal is about. So under the first piece of improving external awareness, it's the things you would expect. It's PR, it's media, but it's also building some better relationships with celebrities, with sports stars, with government leaders around Pennsylvania, because building those relationships can help us do a better job of building our own networks and connecting more broadly. And if we can get some of those key influencers out to our existing events, then we can do some of those things. And similarly, the second strategy about connecting the movement has to do with how we work together internally. So, for example, our new database is integrated in as part of that goal, but also communicating externally with our web pages and social media platforms is also part of that. So again, all of this goal and the associated strategies bundled together is about externally how do we change minds and build positive attitudes, all rolled up again with the overall vision of changing mindsets and helping our athletes connect into the community. So finally, our third goal, and it's intentionally laid out here at the bottom underneath and sort of supporting as a foundation the other two goals, is a building capacity goal. It has to do with what you would expect under building capacity, resources, which is largely money, but also partnerships. We need the resources, people and dollars, to be able to achieve all of these other things, including what I said before about just doing the basics well. We need to make sure that we have the right people and training in place to do that. But second of all, this goal also focuses on leadership. Both the resource piece of this and the leadership piece are pulled verbatim from the global plan. Where we're a little bit different is that we chose to emphasize athlete leadership here in Pennsylvania at this level. It is emphasized in the global plan, but it is written down in sort of embedded in the strategy within the document. There's a similar infographic at the global level, and their infographic doesn't call out athlete leadership specifically at that level. Because of what I mentioned earlier, that I think that athlete leadership and unified sports are two really powerful levers that we have that can help us achieve our vision. I talked about why with unified earlier that teammates view each other differently. In a similar but different way, I think when people see our athletes who are trained as athlete leaders, and again, they have to be well trained and they have to be in meaningful, concrete leadership roles, but when it's not just tokenism, when it's our athletes serving in meaningful athlete leadership roles, when it's done right, that's really powerful. When people see our athletes doing that, it changes people's minds and perceptions and attitudes because they see our athletes differently and they think of our athletes differently. So for that reason, we chose to call it out specifically at a higher level in our plan, so it would be reflected here at the infographic level, at the highest level of the plan. The other thing that is different, I mentioned that there were areas where we emphasized things differently. The other thing that's different is embedded within the leadership element of this. We've also focused much more on volunteers as part of our plan. I think that's an area, quite frankly, that SOI kind of missed at the global level, and I understand it. From the SOI level, when they interact with programs, their most frequent interactions are at the national program level outside the U.S. when they're working with Special Olympics Kenya or Special Olympics France or whomever they're working with. And here in the U.S., when they're working with programs, they're working with Special Olympics Pennsylvania or Special Olympics Texas and so forth. And so they sort of missed the importance of our volunteers at the grassroots level. And so we put that much more heavily into our plan, and it is spelled out within our plan under this area of the capacity goal related to leadership. The final thing that I wanted to point out on this slide before I wrap up is that underpinning all of this here at the bottom, and obviously this is a difference from the global plan as well, is our core values for Special Olympics Pennsylvania. We adopted these a little over a year ago. Our board reviewed and approved them. We had input from volunteers and others across the organization. And I think it's important that if these are our core values and something that we intend to live and lead by, that they should be reflected in something as important as our strategy. And so we put them here as well. And everything that we do in our strategy should obviously align with, support, and ultimately be in alignment with our core values. So that's all I wanted to cover for the overview. I hope that this was a helpful perspective on what we hope to accomplish, why the plan is important and why we have it in the first place, and a little bit about what the partnership agreement is intended to do at the local level. And so I wrap up just by saying that I hope that, again, this was helpful, but that this is also just the start of a dialogue, the next step really being a conversation between your field director and your local program to talk about what this looks like at the local program level, what you can achieve, where you need help, where you see challenges, and so forth. And I know that there will be challenges and struggles and so forth, and I welcome the dialogue to collectively and collaboratively figure out how we work through all those challenges together. So thank you for your time to the overview. Penny, I'll ask you to stop the recording now, and then we'll open it up for